It's my song! Let's sing it! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Come on! It's gonna be fucking awesome! You know the words! It's gonna be fucking awesome! That's it! Sing! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Yeah!
Hi-ho! Coolest Geek Alive here. How are you doing, my fellow Coolest Geeks? I hope you're doing great. Care Bears stare out to you all. It is an interesting time to be alive. I am, hearing tons of things that concern me. And then I'm hearing a lot of things that make me very happy. So, I'm so confused. I don't know how to feel right now. No tax on tips? Glorious. No fluoride in the water? Glorious. Some of these other things? Okay. What does that mean? Anyway, I'm hopeful. Everybody keep your fingers crossed that this great experiment that we're on turns out the way we'd like it to. Anyway, I love you guys, and I'm so excited today to talk about Green Lantern because I've been such a big fan for so long, and it's because of, the run that I'm going to talk about in particular today, Geoff Johns. He is a brilliant writer, and it's because he's a fan. And it's been kind of killing him, I think, in Hollywood because he's also a fan when it comes to these movie people. I very kind of specifically, and maybe this sound like a strange way to come about the conversation, but personally, I chose comic books because I didn't like all the ego that I saw present in film. All these actors and directors and just so many personalities, it seemed. It was one part intimidation of like, I just don't want to deal with all those people. I don't want to spend my life fucking dealing with personalities. And I looked at comics and I just saw craftsmen. Quiet craftsmen, and there's some personalities in comics too, but a lot of the personalities are smaller, and there's a lot more quiet craftsmen, and it's really thankless, the job going on in comic books, and I had a real deep appreciation for the fact that it was more than the sum of its parts in most cases. People thought of it as superhero, as for kids, all this stuff, and the art. A picture is worth 1,000 words. The ability to communicate so much, really, just with the right image. Somebody said to me the other day, you think memes are going to change the world? And I said, yeah, the right ones are. Memes that change minds will change the world. And I have seen some brilliant memes that have changed my mind, that have given me insight to things all the time. I think memes are a brilliant tool in the battle of intellect and conversation. So yeah, absolutely. And pictures in comics. I've talked about this before, but it's a good time to talk about it again because I know some of you guys you like movies and films and I mean movies and films, movies and TV shows and stuff. And you do less reading, or maybe you read, but you like to read novels, and you've always been told that comic books are for kids. And are Pixar films for kids? No. Pixar films are written for everyone, but they know the kids are going to be watching, and they deal with real things. And well, at least this is what Pixar used to mean. The greatest comic books and comic book runs are like Pixar films. I could share this with my kids. I fucking appreciate this as an adult. And there are a plethora. It's hard to find them now on the stands because of so much of the way the creative trickle-down effect has happened on so many different levels. When they started, I like the term casting their writers and casting their creative people. And by casting, I mean they wanted people who looked a certain way. Either they were, and this is like optically, they're a member of the LGBT community. They're black or Hispanic or whatever. This identifying your writers is a problem, because then you have people like Christopher Priest, who they called him up to write, I think it was Cyborg at the time, and he was like, "Now I'll write anybody except the black characters. I'm not going to be your token black writer," which was fucking, you're amazing. Thank you, Christopher Priest. Or myself, who refused to tell people that I was a non-binary writer and that, they could promote me that way. I don't want to be promoted that way. I don't really like there's a lot of things about the non-binary label that fit me. And certainly if we get into a conversation about, like, did I feel like a man? Did I feel like a woman when I came into my existence? No. Not at all. Not at all. I found my place. But that's a conversation for fucking, I don't know. I don't know why we should be having that conversation. Why am I telling you this shit? The only reason I'm telling you is because all of a sudden everybody was having that conversation about themselves. And, like, I don't get it. It has nothing to fucking do with the work that we're doing and why you would be any good at the work we're doing. And the people like Christopher Priest and I, who weren't playing that game, who were measuring ourselves on the work, were replaced in large part, even though Chris is still working and I'm still working, we still work. But the mainstream has become a lot of ideologues, people who believe fervently in a cause of some kind. Ultimately, it's kind of all become one cause steered by financial interests that these people, they know not what they do. Like, there's no winning with this money. You can't give them power so that they can do the things that you want them to do. That's not how it works. I've watched them. I'm 42 years old now, so I pay attention. And they have just taken more and more and more and more and more sovereignty for themselves and controlled things. I have just watched things get controlled to a degree that I'm uncomfortable with. And that's why you'll often hear me speak out against so many of these things. But it's a bummer because, Geoff Johns is a white, straight male in Hollywood or whatever, and he worships at the altar of the Hollywood elites and the people who've made all these great films. He used to be, I think it was an intern for Richard Donner. So he very much wants to be one of these Hollywood mover shakers. Well, the problem with being a Hollywood mover shaker often is that, you just end up eating shit all the time, and you end up making a lot of compromised decisions. The people who get given carte blanche to do their thing are the people who subversively break the system by making a lot of money off of things that they didn't pay a lot for, and that they're, specifically interesting the way they are. Christopher Nolan or Darren Aronofsky. There's, people who come up and, basically convince, are able to convince themselves, or Edgar Wright, even people who do it in smaller doses, David Finch and Guillermo del Toro or whatever, where a few of their movies have the fingerprints of a terrible studio on it, like Mimic or Aliens 3. And, over time, though, they're given the chance to do something really great. And then more and more over time, they're given more carte blanche to be their creative selves. Well, Geoff Johns, he's been trying to work in the studio system with these DC movies, and he ended up getting thrown under the bus big time. And I'm sure that, the Green Lantern film, it reeks of compromise, the Ryan Reynolds version. And, he was involved in that. My friend Adam Schlagmo was involved in that. I know Jeff a little bit. I worked for DC for just a little, it wasn't that I worked for DC for a short period of time, really. Like, I worked for DC, and then I was waiting in the wings, still working for DC for like ages. And then, like, I stopped for a second with DC, and I just stopped completely with Marvel. And then Scott Snyder, Yeah, Scott Snyder. I was confused because you get his name wrong sometimes when I'm saying the damn trying to say the name because Zack Snyder, Scott Snyder, and I'm Jesse Snyder. It's all very confusing. But Scott and I have known each other for, I guess, a lot. Well, we've known about each other for a very long time. We've known each other for a long time. And he approached me at a comic convention and he invited me to do some things in the Batman office when he was at DC. And I was like, all right, well, I guess this will make it easier. And I went back to doing the same thing that I was doing, fucking like waiting in the wings, doing a lot of work, writing a lot of really great pitches for them. And I had multiple people who were on the inside for me, people who I love, Mike Martz. And it just never came together. And that was why that was ultimately why I went independent myself. I just got very frustrated. And the system is frustrating. And I imagine Geoff Johns in this system as somebody who respects film. And it probably has just been the pits for him. And he's already been sort of like knocked back down, the rungs. But this man is responsible for some of the greatest fucking comic books I have ever read in my life. Awesome stuff. So many great things. And I mean, I'll just rattle off a few extra things that if you decide, this Green Lantern thing sounds great and you like it, you can come back to this and you can find me rattling off. But his Flash run is incredible until they decided to bring back Barry Allen and it gets into Flashpoint, and I don't really love that stuff. His New 52 Justice League, which is like one of the most promoted of all the things, is probably the worst shit he's ever written. And the Barry Allen Flash stuff, it just really is very disappointing after years of incredible stuff. But his early stuff on the Flash, up until Rebirth, is great. Also amazing stuff by Geoff Johns. He does this with David Goyer, James Robinson, JSA. Their JSA run is long and fucking awesome. Coming out of that is also a Hawkman, or maybe even more than one tries at Hawkman by Geoff Johns, which was also excellent. I'm trying to think off the top of my head right now some of my favorite things by him. More recently, he had done the Doomsday Clock and the Batman 3 Jokers, which was fucking excellent. Both of those things are awesome. He is a fan. And I think that's one of the biggest things, too. He's a fan, and he's been, fighting for the fandom and trying to, get in the right things and whatnot. And on some levels, he was allowed to do some of the things that maybe he wanted to do with that Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds. And he paid for every choice that he was allowed to make long term. Now, we've got, what's his name? Who's the dude who's taken over the thing? Gunn, James Gunn. So James Gunn and Peter Safran, they are, I'll tell you this. As a person who's read the comics for a significant period of time and also studied them as historical artifacts so as to be useful to an industry that is producing stories within a continuity, building on them, blah, 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 blah. I've really studied the medium and the landscape and whatnot. And the choices that James Gunn has made do not display any continuity towards satisfying growth for the audience that has been reading the periodical comic books and caring about those stories. He may do a fabulous, wonderful, honorable job at his version of the DC universe. I remain optimistic. All the individual things that he's doing might be fucking great. I remain optimistic. But it's definitely not the DC universe that we have grown up with, that he's trying to get out there right now, in terms of where the toys are in the toy box and the stories that having all of these toys like Swamp Thing and whoever else on the table will lead to. It's like, oh yes, that classic Supergirl Swamp Thing story team up, which will now be told. Like, that doesn't exist. So it's kind of like, okay, so we got Supergirl and we got Swamp Thing and we got the Authority. And we like, so what are we doing here? Are we going to just make our own Justice League? Like, that kind of scenario is kind of what's in the minds of the fans. However, doing the Green Lanterns as a cool, hard-boiled, like, crime drama on Earth, starring these Green Lanterns and, like, slowly opening us up to the stuff that is in the Green Lantern universe is fucking amazing. If it really leads to big things. I mean, and it really, if they do it well and do it cool, and then could eventually do the big stories in films, this could be like the coolest fucking thing of all time. So if you're out there, James Gunn, and you could please listen to me, or James Safran, okay, you need to give Geoff Johns some creative control over this Green Lantern thing and help him make it great. Like, you need to, like, listen to him, okay? Because we're going to talk about his Green Lantern run. But first, let me just talk to you about my new line of... No, I'm just kidding. First, let me just talk to you about my relationship with Green Lantern before Geoff Johns took over. My first Green Lantern stories, I think, were JLA, written by Grant Morrison. The Grant Morrison Justice League was great. I fucking love that book. I'm a big fan of humor, so it quickly got me into Kyle Rayner in particular because he was an artist, and I liked that. I was an artist too. I still consider myself an artist, even though I don't do that professionally. But like, I do. I do like graphic design and things like that. I like do that for my band and for whatever else all the time. And occasionally, I guess I've done that for money as well. But that's, I don't like consider myself like an artist really. I like, just somebody who maybe has a good eye and I can, help my artists. The people that I work with are artists. I'm not quite them. But I can doodle out a thing, and I, especially as a younger person when I was reading these comics, I still very much, I was trying to be an artist at that point. And I think this is before I decided to start writing comics, and, so this was like an early book that my friend Greg Aberback, shout out to Greg, he got me into DC. I was basically a Marvel-only guy. Not Marvel-only, I also read Savage Dragon and like a few select things here or there, different creators that I would follow. Mostly I would follow writers. And largely a lot of the writers staple at DC and at Marvel were different at the time. So I didn't necessarily make the jump. But my dude got me into Batman. That eventually like opened up my doors to a bunch of things because I was like, Robin, Justice League, Teen Titans, like and then once you're reading the Justice League, it's like, oh, I kind of like Superman. Oh, all right, fuck it. And then especially if some of the writers that you like switch over to the book. So, before long, I was reading everything over there. But in the beginning, I was reading Kyle Rayner, and I definitely imprinted on him, similar to how I had imprinted onto Peter Rasputin in the X-Men books, who was an artist, and he loved his sister very much. I loved my sister. I still love my sister very much. And that meant something to me. So Kyle Rayner, his story, while I was reading and enjoying the adventures of Kyle Rayner, as written by Judd Winnick, maybe some written by Ron Mars, a lot of people were trashing the depiction of Green Lantern, basically because he was like too soft, and like more of like a balanced human and less of like a sort of military man. Hal Jordan had been this, this jet fighter or jet pilot. And John Stewart, Hal Jordan had been a jet pilot, and John Stewart had been, I don't know, he wasn't a jet pilot, but he was like a more traditional military guy. And then you had Guy Gardner, who was a dick. I don't know what his background was. He was a dick. But he was a good character. He was a lot of character. because somebody realized, well, wait a second, being able to overcome great fear doesn't necessarily mean that like you're not an asshole, which was a great observation. And it's observations like that that make great characters and make great stories, and leaning into all these things is one of the things that Geoff Johns did that made it so wonderful. So the fourth Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner, was sort of like a soft pillow. Comparatively, he was like drawing, and he could do creative things with his Green Lantern ring because he was an artist, which was sort of the interesting thing. Oh, I think that was John Stewart's thing. He was an architect as well, an architect with a military background, and that that wrinkle makes him interesting as a Green Lantern. Them all having personalities, like all their rings having personalities for their personality, reflective of who they were as people, was interesting. An interesting wrinkle that Geoff Johns really like incorporated into the thing. A lot of the things was Geoff explaining things, and Kyle Rayner being a soft pillow got explained in the in the overarching scheme of like the story, and giving all of their unique personalities, just bringing them out and making them play off each other the right way, is a real like big mark of his thing. But anyway, I loved Kyle. He had a sense of humor. He was sort of like, it was sort of like ironic, this being a superhero thing. It was kind of like me being a superhero, like with Superman. And I was like, that's Superman and that's Batman. It was like, this is fucking intimidating, but like, all right, I'm going to do it kind of thing. Cause like, that's the right thing to do. And that's kind of who I am. So I like Kyle a lot. Even though I knew the fans were not a big fan, and I'm always following, as I have always said, the fandom. I care about why. And part of why too was everybody just had a terrible taste in their mouth from what had happened to Hal. There was this period in, I guess it's the 90s, I don't remember. I wasn't reading DC, so I'm not certain, but I think so. I think it's just around the same time where they were just competing with Image and all these things, and they just decided to do a ton of radical things. And one of the things that they did was they just turned Hal Jordan into a bad guy. He went crazy. He destroyed the Green Lantern Corp, and he eviscerated his home city, and like he went nuts. And that was basically where the character had been left off. And the only like good thing that came of that eventually, for fans and for me, it was enjoyable too for the stories that I read. Even though I think there's probably some more stories featuring Hal Jordan as the Spectre than I read, but there were some interesting things done while he was dead as the Spectre, trying to atone for his great sins. But essentially, when Geoff came in with the first story arc, which I'm recommending here, and if you want to just start a little bit, just to toe in, oh my God, Green Lantern Rebirth. It's fucking awesome. I loved Kyle. I was a Kyle guy, and all of a sudden fucking Hal's coming in. To this day, I don't particularly care for Hal Jordan's character, but I appreciate that he exists and he's a force for good, and there's been some interesting things done with him. So many of the things in his world are more interesting than him so often, but I think actually sometimes that makes for the best characters when the things around them are that much more interesting, but at least they have some foundational core that is meaningful. And and he definitely does with his father, and and just he's this avatar for overcoming great fear, similar to the way Daredevil is in a slightly different light. But it's really an excellent concept in and of itself spiritually. What does it mean to be able to overcome great fear? Really, it means to be strong. Right now I'm learning in my life, I'm having to speak my truth about different things. There's things that I've been concerned about for a very, very long time, and I've been kind of shushed up for like a decade. And I've watched as those things have been brought to light as true. And I knew they were true. I wasn't bringing them to people because I suspected I was wrong and I was looking for fucking validation from them. But everybody wanted to fight me. And because I was sort of like emotionally triggered to get pushback on these things that I wanted to talk about, I stopped talking about them. It's been a great, I won't say struggle, but a great journey to become a person who has enough willpower to speak my truth. And like, you know, peace to you, my brother, but that's what I have to say about the thing, you know? And that, you know, that's that inner strength, willpower. That's a really important facet of the psyche of mankind. And when good writers work on Green Lantern, there are some amazing stories that have been told, including some amazing stories told by Alan Moore that Geoff very cleverly connects into all of his run in lots of great and interesting ways. And again, as a fan, honoring great little tidbits of titillating story ideas left by Alan Moore and bringing some of these things together and doing some interesting things with them. I mean, really, really interesting things. So Green Lantern Rebirth, I mean, within like the first like pages, I seem to remember that like basically like Green Lantern comes back, he finds out he didn't do it. He was driven crazy by the parallax consciousness structure that is like this, looks like this bug. And it was in him, and it made him do all those things. It drove him nuts, and he is like being given an opportunity to sort of like set things right. And within like pages, what's his name? Guy Gardner had some crazy warrior thing where he kind of was like the character Random in X-Men, where he had like gun arms and stuff. It was a really weird next gen for the character. I didn't read things associated with it, so I didn't really know anything about it, but they just like ripped it out of him in like 2 seconds. And like within like a few pages, he looked like classic badass Guy Gardner, but better. And there was the 4 of them: Guy Gardner, John Stewart, Hal Jordan, and who am I missing? John, Hal, Kyle, and Guy, right? So, you know, every Green Lantern fan from every generation went, oh, it's my Green Lantern. Oh, it's my Green Lantern. Oh, it's my Green Lantern. And in the course of this 6 issues, which is drawn by Ethan Van Sciver, beautifully, it's gorgeous, these 6 issues of this book, he totally redeems himself, essentially, and brings back the Green Lantern Corps, relights things, you know, and like gets the story going. And, you know, it's been a long time since I've read these books. I've been dying, honestly, to reread all these comics. I think I may have them all in a box at my son's house. I was going through it the other day, but I forget if I didn't take note if that was in it. But I saved like some of my favorite things that I really wanted to reread, and those were some. And I'm hoping that I have them all still, because holy shit, man, the Green Lantern run by Geoff Johns, the entire thing, it is just, it's so fucking awesome. You know, I pulled up a couple things. I made a couple notes here so I could just get myself there. So yeah. So, you know, and so one of the huge things that Geoff Johns does in this run is just set up Sinestro as Hal's nemesis in every way, shape, and form. And it starts here, and it's glorious, and just, man, Mark Strong was such a great casting for Sinestro, and the moments he was there as Sinestro, I was like, this is awesome. This has potential. Too bad the rest of the movie sucks. But Sinestro's an awesome villain. He is a militant version of Hal, essentially. He just basically, he believes in the Green Lantern Corps to its zenith. He just believes that, like, you gotta go harder on these villains and you gotta use fear and murder. And that bit is a big, point of contention amongst the two. And of course, that generally is the main thrust of any good hero villain relationship, is like, this one's trying not to kill people and the other one doesn't give a shit. And then there are various degrees of this, sort of villainy, Punisher being sort of like this line of like, well, I don't know, did you see the guy he killed? That guy sucked. But Sinestro is awesome. Just awesome because, it's like the Thanos thing. The Thanos was right. It's like, people believe, no, eye for two eyes. And that is a way some people are raised. So the first story arc and the second story arc really... It takes a second to get going. I think these issues were drawn by Carlos Pacheco, who's awesome, and they're awesome. But there is a beginning of sort of reestablishing Green Lantern's universe, because he was gone, he was dead, now he's been brought back. He's got his city back. He's got all these pieces back in place. And now you get like Hector Hammond and the Manhunters get reintroduced. The Manhunters, Hector Hammond's the dude with the really big head that you see in like a really crappy way in the freaking movie. And the Manhunters are cool. They were like sort of basically the first attempt by the Guardians, who are the blue guys who set up the whole Green Lantern thing in the first place. Their first plan was robots to govern the galaxy, but basically the robots went bad and they had to make a new plan, and the Green Lanterns had to fight the robots, and now we've got Green Lanterns instead of the robots. But the Manhunters, they keep coming back. He eventually ties them to Cyborg Superman in some fucking awesome ways and ties him into the Sinestro Corps. But Cyborg Superman is a favorite character of mine. He's just so scary. I love Cyborg Superman. When Cyborg Superman's the best. And he shows up here a lot in great capacity. So yeah. And then you also, in these first 6 issues, you get the reintroduction of the Black Hand. The Black Hand's fucking awesome. I don't know if any of these ones are done by Doug Menk, or I don't know if I'm saying his name right. He's one of my favorite artists. I love him. If you're on Instagram, follow him on Instagram. His name is spelled really weird. Doug, Mankhe, or something like that. Oh my God, he's so talented, and he makes all of these animations of his art. He likes to work out, and he makes all these animations of the superheroes and the villains working out. It's very funny, but also badass and cool. And he shows up in here a bunch as an artist. It's amazing. And Black Hand is super cool. He's this shitty villain that Geoff brought back and made really legit. I coveted my Black Hand action figures that I had when I had my awesome action figure collection. So then eventually the second storyline, which again, like this all takes like a moment to rev up. The Rebirth is like fucking shot out of a cannon. Amazing. This like first probably 13 issues are like, okay. But trust me, hang in there. In these issues, we get what's the Revenge of the Green Lanterns. Basically, he rescues a ton of characters that had been thought dead because of the whole Parallax thing years earlier. They killed a ton of fan favorite Green Lantern characters. That has been the one thing that the Green Lantern books have always had going for them, was there was tons of awesome side characters. If you didn't like Hal Jordan, they were in space, they were doing interesting things, finding interesting aliens and whatnot, and there would be a lot of interesting Green Lanterns that you would meet along the way, who would have reoccurring parts like Kilowog and whatever else. Because Salix, another cool one, because they were really connected with the audience. So But during the Parallax Saga, they murdered a ton of those people. And like again, it was like, sort of like to put like a button in it and then to focus on just one Green Lantern, this new Green Lantern that they were going to introduce, this Kyle Rayner Green Lantern. And some people like Kyle and some people didn't. I like Kyle, but I didn't deal with the whole transfer of power, you know? But additionally, let me talk about, because this, like, oh, and this has to do with them. They're captured by the Manhunter, so it's a cool little Manhunter story. And also more seeds are presented, are planted for what Sinestro is going to do. But before I get into what Sinestro is going to do, is you've got the beginnings of the Green Lantern Corps. And they do a Green Lantern Corps recharge book that I think Geoff Johns was involved in writing, and then he hands it off to, I think it might have been David Gibbons and Patrick Tomasi. No, not Patrick Tomasi. Peter Tomasi, who's written some great things that I've really liked, especially his Green Lantern Corps stuff. Also, there was a couple issues written by Keith Champagne. Shout out to Keith. Keith's a friend. Keith's fucking talented as fuck. Keith's only a friend because I'm like, every time I talk to him, I'm just like, dude, you rule. You should write more shit. They need to give you more work. He's amazing. This like bringing back all these characters, and I don't know if Kilowog was necessarily brought back here. He might have been brought back sooner in the Green Lantern Corps thing, but these were some additional characters that were brought back. And shortly after this time, I'm not sure if it directly corresponds with this, but I think it may. They did Green Lantern Corps Recharged, 6-issue miniseries, and then Green Lantern Corps. And that book went alongside this book the entire time, and it was fucking awesome. I mean, really, really, really good. It seemed to interweave flawlessly with things that were going on in the main Green Lantern book, whilst at the same time not stepping on toes and whatnot. It was always just sort of covering ground that wasn't being covered and adding more light and magic to the scene. Obviously, so much of this was choreographed by Geoff Johns at the helm, controlling this creatively, and he clearly had more ideas than he was putting down on the page every page he wrote. And that's really actually the big like downfall of like the first like 13 issues, was like you were just kind of like, yes, and yes, and yeah, I like it, yeah, what else? Like it was just like going a little slow. But everything was getting into place, and getting these things into place in that perfect way, just slowly getting everything into place perfectly. That is the measure of why this series is so glorious. Glorious. It takes the time. And the first thing that it slowly gets into place is Sinestro and the Sinestro Corps. Now, the Sinestro Corps, for you who aren't, get the lingo from Green Lantern, the Green Lantern Corps, like a Marine Corps, the whole group of these guys is the Green Lantern Corps. So this is the Sinestro Corps. Now, Sinestro, as revealed in the Rebirth, he has been wielding as nemesis to Hal the power of fear, which is a different colored spectrum of light, which just so happened to be yellow, which was the power. Like Sinestro he was sort of the most annoying, supervillain nemesis, because basically he was just a purple human being, but they've made him more interesting looking over time, who was wielding a yellow version of the thing that Green Lantern did, and they would fight and blah blah blah. But now it was being shown that basically this was the energy of fear. And I don't know if fear as an idea had been connected to the yellow energy and his character earlier than that. I'm not super familiar with him deeply. Like, I didn't read those original comics. So I'm not sure if that was Jeff's idea too, of like, and you know what it is, the yellow, it's fear. But that is established very firmly in the Rebirth books. And essentially you have Sinestro going off to connect with this power and utilize it the same way that the Guardians are utilizing the power that they're harnessing, which I believe is called the power of ion, that they use to power the Green Lantern Corps. And it's this positive energetic thing of willpower, and it's green. And this yellow light is sort of like this natural enemy to this other light that, you know, has been being generated. And they are in sort of this eternal struggle, this yellow poisonous light poisoning the things that they create, and this green light that they're trying to bring forth to power positive change in the universe. So Sinestro lights up the lantern for the Yellow Lantern Corps and starts the Yellow Lantern after, I seem to remember, collecting these, you know, some of the worst members of the galaxy. Or does he just sort of turn it on and then the rings go out? That might be it, yeah. Because the rings, so the cool thing that the Green Lantern Corps does, and this is so cool, because like basically every interesting thing that had been thought up for the Green Lantern Corps was now reimagined for this evil version of the Green Lantern Corps. So people would get rings, you know, at a certain point it'd become the thing when the ring would fly off your finger if you died, and it would land on somebody else that was capable of overcoming great fear, and it would say, so-and-so, you have the ability to overcome great fear. Welcome to the Green Lantern Corps. And now they'd be the new Green Lantern. So, you know, and it's an interesting thing. It becomes like lifting Mjolnir. Who can wear the ring? Who is worthy of carrying one of these rings? So they did that with the Yellow Lantern, the Yellow Lantern and the yellow rings. And these rings are created and they go out into the galaxy to recruit those who are capable of creating great fear. And, you know, Batman gets a ring because he can scare the shit out of people. There's a great Batman, there's been a few now, Batman action figures with him with the yellow ring, the ability to instill great fear. And Sinestro, you know, wants to sort of control the galaxy like a despot. And he's got these goons, you know, and there's a Kilowog is this pink giant kind of goonish alien that they've made sort of like a drill sergeant in the more recent years of the book during this thing. And his like evil doppelganger is this like many-toothed kind of reptilian gray lizard monster, you know, in the yellow suit. And it was great, just like, you know, it was so easy for them to sort of just juxtapose a lot of their classic characters and make these evil versions. And for a while, this Sinestro Corp thing built up to, because from issue like 14 to issue 20, you've got like the build up to the Sinestro Corp war. And there was a lot of tie-ins, including all the stuff that was in the Green Lantern Corps. So a lot of characters got introduced in there. And they did a whole bunch of little, I don't know if it was miniseries, one-shots, whatever else, introducing various characters. And so often in these big line-wide crossovers and whatnot, they will try to do things like this, and it's not great. Sometimes it's great. But this was one of the rare moments where there was like not a fucking bad story in the bunch. Like everything added to the whole. Every contributor to these events contributed fucking amazing stuff, brought their A game. The art is amazing. You know, you've got Ivan Rice in some of these things, drawing some of these books, and Patrick Gleason, who's a favorite of mine. So many wonderful artists and wonderful writers, and they all do great shit. So there is a build-up to the Sinestro Corp war, and it is awesome. You know, it's just great stuff, just like all like the fucking, you know, the bad guys are coming. And then with issues 21 through 25, you've got the Sinestro Corps War, which if you just wanted to just jump into that like a pussy, you could. But like, no, dude, it's so fucking good, man. I mean, like, you really, this series is so worth your time. It's some of the best comic reading that I ever did. I'm so grateful that I did it as it was coming out monthly. I mean, it was so great. I was so invested. And to be able to just finish an issue and then have to wait a month. But meanwhile, there's other little stories from the Green Lantern Corps, and there's a couple little things here or there, and you're just waiting for that next fucking issue. So you can find out what happens next. Holy shit, this is great. It's great. It's that kind of reading experience. So please, like, don't take my recommendation lightly here. This stuff is awesome. So let's see. Key moments in here, important to mention. It's a lot of this takes place on Earth, so there's some great shit going on, involves some, regular characters, non-Green Lantern characters. And here we get the introduction of the Anti-Monitor in connection to the Black Lanterns and the prophecy of the Blackest Night, which is Jarul. It's all so great, and like it's easy to point this out as like the pinnacle of it, but the end is so fucking satisfying because of so many things, and there's even more sort of beyond that is very satisfying too. So I highly recommend that shit. But we're getting there. And this all redefines Sinestro as sort of like a master strategy, and I mean absolutely like the most major antagonist to the Green Lantern Corps and Hal Jordan, his nemesis, blah blah blah. There's this secret origin story that takes place in like 29 through 35, which it retells Hal Jordan's origin story in connection to Sinestro in lots of interesting ways, connecting them together better, just deepening the relationship in meaningful ways. Good stuff, which, I mean, like, again, like, if they could fucking get a tiny percentage of this shit onto the screen. Oh, Jarul. And here we get the introduction of Atrocitus and foreshadowing the rise of the Red Lantern Corps. So now you might say, Jesse, the Red Lantern Corps. Well, yeah. Geoff saw something really cool that was already present. There was this yellow ring that the main nemesis was on, which seemed to be like this, antithesis kind of energy or whatever. And then there was also this Star Sapphire thing where this lady was possessed by love. And I guess maybe the fear thing had been in there sooner. That probably tells me that it was definitely there sooner. And maybe I knew that it was there sooner. But I'd forgotten whether or not that was true. Specifically, Carol Ferris, his love interest, she had been possessed by the Star Sapphire energy. I think some other girlfriends of his and some other people had been possessed by the Star Sapphire energy, which was this like love energy that had been out to kill Hal Jordan once or twice. But this love energy, once again, it was sort of similar. Star Sapphire had like a similar sort of power set to Sinestro, who was using this yellow light, and she's using this like pink light. So he came up with this idea for this emotional spectrum of light that was being utilized by the various, has been, but was about to be utilized more broadly by these various groups. And they break down relatively simply to, like, if you do Roy G. Biv, the Red Lanterns are about rage. The Orange Lanterns are about avarice, greed. The Yellow Lanterns are about fear. On the other side of the coin are the more good guy type lanterns. The Green Lanterns are about will. The Blue Lanterns are about hope. The Indigo Lanterns are about compassion. And the Violet Lanterns are about love. And they're at the top of the, sort of rainbow spectrum. And the love can
be brought bad. There's like reasons why the Star Sapphires had been sort of like deemed sort of negative things over time. There's stories that were told there to clear that up a little bit at certain points. I think they might have gotten told during some of the lead up to some of this Sinestro Corps war. I'm not sure, but I think so. And now you've got the introduction of the Red Lanterns and their leader, Atrocitus. Now, because of the nature of like sort of Hal being the figurehead of the thing, you end up the figureheads. Sometimes they'll have some sort of guardian type thing or whatever involved in what they're doing, singularly or otherwise. But most of them have like a figurehead that is meaningful and the one who so much of the story and the whole building of this thing is based upon. And Atrocitus basically gets his origins from the Alan Moore stories, Green Lantern stories that he told. I'm not sure if it's one or two or maybe a few that he had written, but I'd read them. I just don't remember exactly how many of them there were, or if it's just one, maybe. But and I don't think Atrocitus like appears, but Geoff Johns weaves him into that as his sort of origin and his location, where that shit took place, and where there's a really scary story with these beings making this terrible prophecy, and basically Geoff Johns brings it to light through the Red Lanterns and through some of these Black Lanterns and these other things. So this whole thing is setting the stage for the Red Lanterns, Atrocitus, and the Blackest Night storyline, which ultimately is sort of led by the Black Hand, who is an old supervillain from Earth who's been like channeling this energy, whether he's known it or not. Again, Geoff has just been doing great work here and sort of like retroactively connecting a lot of dots and putting a lot of things together in wonderful ways and reinventing these characters with artists. They look incredible. Everything's very cool looking. So many great images. So in like the 2008s, 2009s, you get the Rage of the Red Lanterns, which I think is like a shorter story arc, 36 through 38. But you get Atrocitus forming the Red Lantern Corps, now similar but different to the way Sinestro formed the Sinestro Corps. Some really great, silly and fun characters come out of this, like this evil cat Dextar, who's fucking, and so many of them, like it takes a while for you to get to explanations. You just like, a lot of these artists were allowed to just design characters, and then after the fact, the artists would figure out what their origins were. I mean, that's a great way to go about it. Really, really good. So I mean, and there's so many. I was trying to find like the top 100 Green Lantern characters, because there's so many characters and nobody had made a list, and it was all broken up into tiny little lists, and it's like, I'm not gonna remember everybody's fucking name. But I mean, there's so many, and it was just easy again, because it's like, okay, those are the Fear Lanterns. These are the Angry Lanterns. So what are the angry version of Kilowog, angry version of this hot Green Lantern, angry version, like, it's like, it's easy. It's painting by numbers, but it's great. So many great characters, great stories, and great creativity came out of this. And like I said, it's not just from Geoff Johns. Like all the people involved peripherally in the Green Lantern Corps. I could go through all the breakdowns for the Green Lantern Corps thing, but a lot of the story arcs that I would be talking about are subtly in relation to this and just sort of expansion upon this stuff, and then they would like cross over with each other in major ways. It was awesome. And like the stars of the Green Lantern Corps book are Guy Gardner, and was it Kyle John Stewart? I think all three of them at various points changed around, and they introduced new Green Lanterns who were cool at different points. It was great stuff. All of it was great. So then you've got also during the Rage of the Red Lanterns, the introduction of Larfleeze, and he is essentially the Orange Lantern Corps. And not to make everything exactly the same, the orange power is being hoarded by one man, who is hoarding it so well, and everybody he's basically gone around, and anybody who's tried to harness the power in any way, shape, or form, he kills them and uses an avatar of them to fight his battle as the Orange Lantern Corps. And he's selfish and interesting and stupid and cool. They did a Christmas special with him, which was super fun, which was, again, another signpost of sort of Geoff Johns' awareness, of the market and sort of leaning into the right things and presenting the characters and the world in the right way to make it that much more inviting to people to check this stuff out, check out the Green Lantern stuff. And I mean, the numbers for Green Lantern, very few books grow and grow and grow like month over month. Walking Dead is famous for doing that. Invincible did it a little bit. Green Lantern was doing it. All these books involved in the series, like, just people were just like, this is great. Just kept reading. It was awesome. And you could still read it. I believe the Green Lantern Corps stuff finally got collected as well. There's an omnibus now. So 39 through 42 are the Agent Orange storyline, and basically you get the whole deal that I was telling you about Larfleeze, and then it gets into Blackest Night, and granted, the Blackest Night stuff was being seeded throughout all these Larfleeze stories and whatever else, and just he's just an added element to this whole thing, which now includes the Sinestro Corps and the Red Lanterns and the Star Sapphire in some capacity. I think by this time, I think they added in Star Sapphire relatively fast. So there's tons of Green Lantern tie-ins and back and forth between basically I think the Green Lantern tie-ins just give like even more to the story than what is there. Everything that you have plus some more. But it introduces Necron, who is the embodiment of death, which is like a character that existed in DC's universe before, but now with this Blackest Night thing and this power of death and like the symbol and the whole, it just arranges it within this mythology wonderfully. And they bring these Black Lantern rings out to resurrect fallen heroes and villains as undead Black Lanterns, and it is fucking great. Story's awesome. You got Hal teaming up with the other Lantern Corps because it's like everybody's gonna die. So you got Sinestro having to team up, and Atrocitus trying to team up. Everybody's teaming up to fight back death. And this just like cements this whole Lantern mythology in this universe big time. I mean, Superman, the old Dead Earth 2 Superman's brought, but there's so many characters that are brought back, like a whole Justice League's worth of dead characters are brought back. And there were characters who had just been killed at the time and various things. And all these characters get brought back. Granted, this leads to fucking Flash Rebirth and shit like that, which sucked. But oh my God, this Green Lantern stuff's great. So continuing on, and Blackest Night, again, another one of those story arcs that you could just read it by yourself if you wanted to. But I recommend that you do this whole thing because it's fucking awesome. So now from this, all these heroes come out of this. There's this whole Brightest Day storyline that comes on. There's a whole bunch of Brightest Day issues. I think it was weekly, this Brightest Day storyline. But Brightest Day was great, tied into the stuff. That's worth checking out. The Brightest Day tie-ins were awesome. But again, this continued to just solidify this whole big mythology of lanterns, and the Indigo Corps is eventually introduced, and and they're teased in one way or another, but eventually you get more information on them, and you find out that they are. Should I tell you? Maybe I shouldn't tell you. They have a unique way of getting the members for the Indigo Corps. The Hope, the Blue Lanterns, they're introduced. They're kind of similar, sort of ancillary and helpful for the Green Lanterns. But every little bit of it is well conceived and intricately thought out, and worth the story time and the building. And it's filled with so many colorful, interesting characters of all sorts of varieties, from humans to aliens. Brightest Day is like an extra ancillary thing that you could add on to your reading besides the Green Lantern Corps and the Green Lantern tie-ins during all this time for all of these things. Green Lantern tie-ins for Sinestro Corps War, Green Lantern tie-ins for Blackest Night. Yeah, Green Lantern tie-ins for Blackest Night. There's maybe one or two minor stinkers in there, but most of them are amazing. And I mean, stinkers like maybe there's a short story that's not as great as some of them. In some of the Blackest Night ones, I think maybe one or two of them was okay, but most of them were fucking amazing. And there's a lot of tie-ins. Yeah, so Brightest Day is a little extra, but you'll get a taste of the Brightest Day shit in Green Lantern as it continues on, and then you get into the 60s of this Green Lantern run, and you get the War of the Green Lanterns. You got the Rogue Guardian Krona, who, like I said, some of the other corps have their own guardians in one way or another. She basically takes control of the Green Lantern Corps finally, her machinations complete. You get like a lot of ring switching with the main characters switching around and taking rings from other corps because the Green Lantern Corps gets taken down, and you get like all these various factions of the Corps at war with one another and bringing it together. I had said earlier that Kyle Rayner had been sort of made a sense of as a character that was sort of soft. There are characters who are capable of holding all of the Green Lanterns, or not Green Lantern, all of the emotional spectrum, and those characters are very special, and they can be White Lanterns. And I think the first White Lantern was Kyle. I think Hal does the same thing as well. Kyle had gone on to do this, hold the ion power within him and these things. And so they sort of like explained sort of his specialness of why he was unique in those ways. I really liked him as Ion. I really liked I don't know if they've collected any of the Ion books that they did with him as the series of him starring Ion. That was awesome. I also really like and recommend the Judd Winnick Green Lantern book starring Kyle Rayner that I read before all this. Excellent. And the JLA by Grant Morrison, awesome. That's like 70 issues of great stuff. And the first few story arcs by Mark Millar after that, not Mark Millar. Well, there's a story arc called Tower of Babel right after Grant Morrison's run, and it's excellent. One of my favorite writers wrote it, and I'm just not remembering his name right now. Too many names, too many things.
Mark Waid, jumping in just to say, Mark Waid. I just remembered it as I was editing this. I can't believe I couldn't remember his name. Just sometimes this shit falls out of your head when you have so many facts. Back to the show.
It'll come to me. So there's a lot, like I said, ring swapping and big war. There's some beautiful, beautiful fucking pages here. I mean, you just so many colors of the various rainbow spectrums of light fighting with one another in space, and it's fucking gorgeous, super cool, and it's the culmination of so many of these things. And I would say you can stop there, but I would say you can take yourself one step further. And I haven't even read all of this myself, I must admit, but I've read some of it, and what I've read was great. And I really want to finish this when I get a chance, because I think it is a sort of like epitaph to like the whole thing. And with the New 52, one of the few really good things that came out of it. There's this interesting switchover where Hal Jordan is replaced by his nemesis Sinestro as Earth's Green Lantern. And, they basically, they form an uneasy alliance to fight the Indigo tribe. And like I said, I was explaining them before, they're interesting. And basically a scheme that the Guardians had going on, and, the little something, the blue people. And that's like a big main part of the story arc. But then the Guardians attempt to replace the Green Lanterns with the Third Army, and the Lanterns, have to unite against them. More just Sinestro and Hal really, it's just all these things. Sinestro and Hal just like after. They've been through so much as enemies, like respecting each other as enemies. It's interesting stuff. And then, towards the end of it, you get the Volthoom, who's the first Green Lantern, or the first Lantern, escapes imprisonment, and basically feeds on other people's emotions, and he could change reality. But and this, like, Sinestro has to embrace his role as a Yellow Lantern, and, like, go back to, like, sort of the new status quo with, like, him doing what he had previously been doing, and now Hal is left as the Green Lantern, and basically things are sort of returned to a certain bit of normalcy for the next people to come in for the Green Lantern run. I cannot recommend this shit to you enough. It is so good. It is so good. It's filled with so much. A great run in comic books is just priceless. It's like when you get into a novel series or a book series and you're just like, oh, Jesse, I just love that one series. And every single time it came out, it's just so easy for me to read. Just dive into it, And I was recommending Geoff Johns' Flash run until he reintroduces Barry Allen with it was like that. But that is, I think, 50 issues if I'm lucky. I don't even think it was that many. I mean, if you really want to go full bore, it's 67 issues of the main Green Lantern book. And the Green Lantern Corps was doing about the same thing. So let's say 60 issues of Green Lantern Corps, a ton of tie-ins. So, like, let's say 24 tie-ins on top of that or whatever. So 60, 120, 100, 150 issues of, like, fucking flawless comic books. Oh, plus the 6 issues of the Rebirth. And then if you really want to friggin' do it to it and finish it off with the New 52 relaunch, which is another 20 comics. I think there might have been some good tie-ins too to that as well. Another 20 comics, and you've got a good 200 issues of Green Lantern. These stories are great and layered, and there's so many characters. It's so excellent. It really, really, really is. I always I try to focus on the most mainstream stuff because I want to be a good gateway drug for people who love geeky stuff into the stuff that I love. And this is just such a good one. What a good one to start. If you really want to see some elevated material that just demonstrates what can be done with comics, how awesome they can really be, what an amazing medium it really is, how many amazing artists there are, great storytellers. It's this, man. Just Geoff Johns' Green Lantern Corps, and, like, follow the ads and buy everything in association with it, and grab the what do you call it? Brightest Day. Brightest Day was fun. And if you like Brightest Day, Brightest Day will get you into a lot of sort of like DC Universe kind of stuff. And I think there's a couple different writers who worked on Brightest Day beyond Geoff Johns. And I'm trying to remember. I don't remember exactly who wrote that thing. I think he was involved, whatever. But it's just great stuff, man. Great stuff. If you take my advice here, I have just provided you with just so many hours of wonderful, glorious reading experience. You will thank me for it. If you are in the future thanking me for it, going, oh man, Jesse was right, write me a letter at jesseblaze@jessesnider.com and tell me, oh my God, you're the best. You saved my life. Great comic books are great. Yeah, I know they are. All right, cool. Anyway, I love you guys. Thank you so much for listening. I'm still not doing All Your Favorite Bands Suck. No new episodes. If you listen anywhere but Spotify, you can still find All Your Favorite Bands Suck. But I haven't done any new episodes yet. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do about the format to appease Spotify because they took us down. But every Friday, we're doing everything they don't want you to know, esoteric wisdom, and all sorts of conspiracy shit, stuff I love to talk about. If you love to talk about it, I'm not going to trigger your ass. It's like I don't want to make anybody mad. But if you like to talk about that shit, go listen. Anyway, I love you. I have been lax in my Saturday episodes, but I'm finally going to do a fucking coolest pick for an awesome Netflix movie for this Saturday's episode of Coolest Geek Alive. And I hope you will join me again next Wednesday for another fucking awesome episode of the Coolest Geek Alive. You've been listening to Coolest Geek Alive with me, your host, Jesse Blaze Snider. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe for more excellent geek culture content.
Thanks for listening.
It's my favorite part. Isn't that heavy? I played that. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Coolest alive. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Stay with your tribe. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Revenge of the Geeks. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Week after weeks. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Laughing with you. It's gonna be fucking awesome. And crying sometimes too. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Spelling it out. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Making you shout. I'm a genius. I got lyrics coming out my bum for days. You like that? It's a kazoo solo. I played that too. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Talking some shit. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Living the shit. My voice is gonna be fucking awesome. Food in our mouth. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Get in the mouth. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Tell all your friends. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Call right or text. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Raising the bar. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Straight to the stars. It's gonna be fucking awesome. It's starting soon. Straight to the top of the awesome. Passing the moon. It's gonna be fucking awesome. On with the show. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Ready, set, go. It's going to be fucking awesome. Fucking awesome. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Just wait. You'll see. You'll all see.
The podcast playground.